Hey everyone, welcome to the UNICOMM podcast on supporting student engagement, where we're looking into means and ways on how staff and also higher education institutions can support active student participation. This is our third episode. In the first episode, we looked at staff competences to adequately support active student engagement. In the second episode, we talked about staff well-being and self-care. Today, we're going to take a broader look, also what institutions can do to support active student participation. I am joined by Maxim Tomoszek from Palacky University in Olomouc, Czechia. Maxim, it's great to have you on the show. Can you maybe start by telling us a little bit about your role and how you see student engagement playing out in your day-to-day work?
Sure. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you, Elke, for your kind invitation to this podcast. I'm happy that we have this time dedicated to actually having this talk, and I hope that also the audience will be able to draw some valuable inspiration from it. So my role at my institution is Vice Dean for Education for bachelor and master degrees at the Law Faculty of Palacky University. When I talk about my academic career, I'm an academic for 20 years already. I usually say that I have two chairs in terms of my academic expertise. One of them is comparative constitutional law, which is my original domain. But very soon after starting at the law faculty to teach, I became involved in clinical legal education, which is basically allowing the students to allow practical skills and competences by actually applying what they learn in the law school in order to help people who cannot afford paid legal services. And that includes a lot of thinking, not just about what is the content that the students need to learn, but also about the competences, the skills, how to communicate, how to write, how to think about law. It really shaped my identity as a teacher, but also as a person who I am today. So these are the two main things that I do in my work, and I try to implement both of these in my vice dean responsibilities as well. But I also have to say that I cannot imagine, working just through the administrative stuff and not being able to be in contact with students in my courses. So I love teaching students and debating with students. Oh, maybe one interesting thing is that recently did the 16 personalities test, which told me that I'm a debater. And that's what I absolutely most love to do, debate with students. That's great.
Okay, let's start the debate here. Very interesting what you just said, this applied approach. To me, this sounds almost already very forward-looking, in teaching, fostering active participation on actual cases, if I understood correctly, like towards new ways of learning. Is that so? New ways of not only transmitting content, but fostering skill sets.
Yes, that's definitely what legal clinics do. It's a lot about communication, but also case management, time management. It's about thinking, how to analyze, how to structure the problems, how to find or look for solutions, how to have a new perspective. There's a lot of creative thinking, critical thinking that is involved. And all these skills, as I said, they require training. They require practice. So this is what we aim to do. So that's one part. Like in order for a lawyer to be a good lawyer, it's not just that they know the law. It's a lot of other things. But also besides that, if you have the students working on real cases with real people, that creates a type of motivation. Actually, most of the students, when they go to law school, they would say, I'm here because I want to help people. I want to be applying the law. I want to get to the core of things. And this is how we allow them to do that. If you just sit with law books and learn about the case law and all the statutes and everything, that's very dry. And I think it sucks your soul, basically, and then you become this mindless lawyer who just reproduces whatever is in the legal regulation. But that's not the point. That's not the real goal of who the law faculties should be creating.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah, these are basically, you've outlined it already, the future skills that all international organizations are kind of advertising for, looking for, asking for higher education to kind of produce in graduates. But let me ask, your dual role, you mentioned it, you're a teacher, but you're also a vice dean in administration. As dean, looking at bachelor and master programs, how do you view student engagement? What does it mean to you? You know, it's difficult to define. Where do you see student engagement?
Yes. Again, I will try to structure it. First of all, I think from my perspective, very often I think about why students do or do not succeed in their studies. And I think this is one of the core questions a lot of people in higher education are asking right now. And definitely there are multiple factors which influence this. And there are things that the law school can do. There are the things that the students themselves can do. Also other things like outside motivators, which can be important. And let me say that student motivation is one of the most determining factors in the rate of success of students. So from that perspective, student engagement is crucial for the students' success in their studies. And as I said, it's combined. So there are some things for the student motivation that the law school can do, and some things that the students themselves need to consider and think about. So in that perspective, I think it's a combined effort, like with everything in education. Always there is, the educator and the student, and they have to work together. So student engagement is very important. And I think that for many students, the factors that increase their engagement may be different. So I think it's widely correlating with what are the goals, the reasons why the students engage in higher education. And it may be because I want to learn new things. I'm just curious. Maybe I want to prepare for a certain profession. Maybe I want to solve all the world's problems. So that's why I'm there. And I think that including a little bit of all of those into your education, into the program, into the design of the classes, courses, the program as a whole, can add to the motivation. I think it's important to start to work with the motivation from day one. So to explain, we are in this together. I think this is, to some extent, a new thing for many students who come right off high school, that they are not prepared to actually be the agents in the role that they are supposed to be actively looking for things and managing themselves. They have been managed basically their whole life. And now, it's very different for them. It's basically paradigm changing situation for them. So it's important to equip them with the skills and with the type of thinking that they need to actually be able to make these decisions. But then I think, like with many things, you may present the content and the skills in a way that is quite technical and doesn't, I would say, speak to your heart. But you can also do it with really presenting very compelling stories. So if people will tell me, law is so uninteresting, I would say, yeah, I can now show you 1 2-minute video that you will think about for the rest of the day. And I think that's the point, how you want to present these things, to present the dilemmas which are very difficult to resolve. And you really have to think deeply and from various perspectives and assemble all the arguments. And that's what the lawyers are supposed to do. And then provide an answer which might be, I don't know. Very often the answer, I don't know, if made for very informed reasons, may be the best answer that as a lawyer you can provide. Well, and then maybe one last thing, which I think is very important for student engagement. There is a idiom, and I don't know, it's Czech, maybe it's also in other languages, but basically it goes, someone who is not on fire cannot ignite the others. So it means if I don't care about what I do, I have no chance of, making or motivating the others to do that. But if I do care about it and I can passionately present it to others, then of course, not all of them, but many of them can be actually inspired by this to do it. And I think everybody remembers, specifically a teacher or a role model or a guru from their past who really made this impression on them and motivated them to do things. So I think, this is what also, if you as a teacher care about what you teach, you should also think about, how do I inspire my students to follow in my footsteps?
Very interesting to hear. Staff needs to be motivated as well. We're in this together. It's kind of a learning partnership. in a way that's been described by you, but that we've also talked about in the preceding episodes. There was kind of this issue of being a partner at eye level versus acting as an authority figure. Where do you stand on that? What is the role? Are there shifting roles between students and staff these days?
This is very interesting dynamic, I would say. I personally am more, I prefer to understand my role as a facilitator, not an authority or a teacher per se. Like, I'm not transferring the knowledge to my students. I'm more or less a guide to them. So I can tell them, here, this is the stuff that you can read. This is the stuff we can watch. This is what we can talk about. But in the end, it's you who have to develop and absorb the things that you know and develop the competencies that you need to work with it. I can help you with that, but definitely there's no magic trick like I will do something and you will suddenly know how to do things. So that's how I understand myself, because my understanding is that if you really develop something by yourself, it's something that will stay with you for your whole life because you have been through the process of doing it. And even if you maybe forget some of those things, you can always repeat the process because you know how to. So there's a nice Confucius saying, give me a fish and you feed me for a day. Teach me how to catch fish and you feed me for my whole life. So that's the point. I want to teach the students how to catch the fish. And that requires a bit different type of approach. I also think that especially for lawyers, this, agency, autonomy, the self-confidence to be the active player is a very important thing. And I think that until you actually do legal stuff in that capacity, so it's your choice, which problem do you tackle, in what way do you tackle it? You are not a lawyer because you still need somebody to be guiding you. But for lawyers, I think it's important to understand most of the time we ourselves set our path. We ourselves decide how we resolve the problem. So that's what I want to teach the students. Interestingly, lately what I'm seeing is that students actually, they ask for a lot of guidance and they maybe I'm aging. So, my beard grows white and I might be starting to look like the, silly old professor with a lot of authority. I don't know what the reason is. But anyway, I think it seems to me that this particular generation of students that is in law schools right now, they tend to be less autonomous than I would remember from before. And this is just my impression. I don't have any studies, or better said, I haven't been looking for any studies to actually confirm this. That's just my impression. But yeah, I feel that even reinforces my attitude that we really need to be educating the students to be autonomous players, autonomous actors in this field.
That's very interesting. You raise a lot of interesting points. We'll get back to what has changed in recent student cohorts later. But first, you mentioned that you see yourself as a facilitator. This is actually, and I'm going to let the audience know, how we met. We've mentioned the peer coaching group in the previous episodes as well. This is how we all got together. And you, Maxim, were the facilitator. And I must let you know this way as well. You did an excellent job. It was such a wonderful, enriching experience, the exchange. And it is continuing. It didn't stop. It's still going on. And it's, I think, valuable for all participants. So thank you for your wonderful facilitation during that group. And in this group, you mentioned an example. We were also talking about authority, shifting roles, and also the role of space in teaching or at higher education institutions, at universities, frontal, teaching the teacher in the front of the class. Everybody looks up to them, listening more or less passively. And you mentioned new spaces to rethink kind of the teacher-student role and going out into nature. Would you maybe want to say something about that here as well?
Yes. Thank you for bringing this up. It is remarkable how the whole education system actually since the first class of elementary school is arranged in a way that really puts the central attention to the teacher and puts them, in a high spot so that everybody can see them and in the leading role. And what this usually leads to are, as you said, passive students, because they tend just to watch and take notes. And that was, for me, very difficult when I started to teach in the university. Students were not asking questions. They were not answering questions, and that lack of activity was really very difficult for me because, as I told you, I'm a debater. I want to have a debate. I want to have a conversation flowing. And it's quite difficult to actually start this in a classroom. And actually, it's still present because I do have a class in professional ethics, which is basically just about debate, because there are so many different perspectives that you can take on any type of situation that I really put very much attention to telling the students, yes, I want every one of you to express what you think and how do you view these things. How is it different from anybody else? And my opinion is only as good as any of yours opinions in this situation. And they said, for us, this may be the first class where we can actually openly discuss things with the professor. So you see that this, tight structure in terms of authority, the power structure, is still very strongly present in many things. And as you mentioned, it's reinforced not in the least by the space, how the space is arranged. So that's why I said there are ways how you can go around how the space is designed in the university classroom. Either you can rearrange the furniture, which is obviously the first thing that you could be doing. But what I have an experience with, and this was really great, I took students to walk through the park, which is right beside the law school. And this was the first class of human rights clinic. And I said, just look around and tell me what human rights issues you see. I want to develop your sensitivity to human rights issues. And human rights issues is not something that is, somewhere over there, on some distant island. No, these are things which are happening every day here, just in front of our eyes, but we are blind to them. So that's what I wanted them to do. And as well, but that I did not communicate as explicitly as this, was to destroy that power structure. So once you're walking, you are all in the same. Nobody's leading. You're working as a group. You are having a conversation, which is much different than it would be in the classroom. And I think that, it is worthwhile to thinking about how can I contribute to the classroom, having this sense of community in a sense. So belonging together and not this power structure, so developing hierarchies.
That's fascinating, almost reminiscent of the old Greeks, peripatos, who were walking around. Yeah, we should definitely bring that back. Yeah, it's also such a clear image of how power structures are dissolved in this spatial setting. Fascinating.